Yo, what's goody? I go with the name of Danny Pacheco for those of you who don't know or might just be new to this channel / podcast. The name of the podcast is called The Big T Debate. And if you're not so well informed of what goes down here, we pretty much just talk about everything that is related to pop culture and music. And I guess for the regular listeners and my regular audience, you might feel like, there's some explaining that I have to do. And yeah, I know I've been away for a while, but in my time being away, I was just working on this current setup that we have here, and I'm pretty glad that we're back. And it seems like, kenako ngweng shithata ne ke tsereng ene ka bona re na losing tse ke mistseng automatsona tse dintse ke feel ga ribla na re nga bolela ka tsona because it's all about being time sensitive and na we fitile bila if I were to just put it down to that. But I did realize that even as you try not to just be a part of like this whole social media stuff that's going on Twitter, you find yourself just falling back into that whole world of what's actually happening, what scandals are going down and whatever. But I think last week was pretty much a positive one for me because I got to realize a whole lot of things, especially when it comes to just the whole thing of what happens once you have like music and you're ready to actually drop it to people. There's this ever-growing trend. In my head, I like to call it like a pandemic because if you like at some point, if you are going to tease music to people or to the public, eventually you are going to have to release this music. And the Mthuda trend tweet, and I was just realizing Bila, this man, it's not the first time he's actually done this to people, I get obviously there's questions that, come up in your head. You think about, okay, what could possibly be the reason why this dude is trending? And it kind of draws us back to what I was just saying, like this man is, famous for doing what he's doing, which is tease songs and then take a while to release them, or even it gets to a point where we don't even get to hear these releases that he's been teasing. And he was trending for just that one reason that, okay, there's a couple of songs that he teased. Emlanjeni, I've seen a couple of people even already just crying due to such songs, already talking about how this is the one song that I'm going to play when I get married. And it made me think about Njelic, what's a song called Umshado. I talk about the song as if it was released, but it was never released. The only time I ever got the chance to actually listen to the song was on a mix. Yeah, this other DJ on YouTube. And if you do anything, even if try going on these illegal sites, there's still going to be that one tag from that DJ's mix in the 8. So it's like I tend to wonder, like, okay, cool. It's cool to like hold on to songs. Maybe you have plans for these songs, but like, when are we going to get to a point where people actually releasing this music, man? Like, we can't keep on teasing songs, giving people bite sizes of, songs that might actually come to surface soon, and actually not even release these songs as soon as we are, expecting these songs. So I feel like, if I were just to narrow down this whole discussion that I've been having with this whole idea of, teasing songs, I would say that it's approach via a conversation or something that someone was saying in the public space, or it's better off for that person, or it's a girl or guy that has a crush on you, and they mention this individual, and then they give you like small parts of this idea that, okay, this person might be crushing on you. It's better off for them not to even approach you at all. Like, if we talk about and then he would say that at least I would like for you or reveal or and then when I've already crossed the line. This is as far as I'm gonna go in terms of like releasing this information related to this individual that might be secretly admiring you. I feel like, it's pointless. Like, rather just keep it to yourself than just not dish out what we are expecting, But I like to just give a shout out to these other guys also, if you're still just sticking to this whole element of social media and what's been going down on Twitter. Besides me being sad about the Mthuda holding off to 2 songs, which a lot of people are trying to get married to. there were some other positives that I got to realize on Twitter, which is this collective. I like to call these dudes a collective because there's a whole bunch of them. There's this other artist called Rojo. I don't know if they record in the same studio, but there's Rojo, there's Tyson ST, of which I've mentioned in my previous episodes, this podcast. And then there's another dude that they roll with called Miles, and that's the one dude that I want to focus on right now. And it was I think my second time on Twitter Spaces, and I realized something really interesting when I was there. The fact that this dude has just been giving us EPs ever since he made his debut. He had been releasing music before, but these days it's regarded as a debut release if it's on online streaming platforms, as opposed to you're releasing music but just to SoundCloud or Skhanda Muzi via WhatsApp, but people still getting your music via data file host. So my one question to him, because he opened that platform on Twitter Spaces for people to just ask questions related to his latest release called We Gon' Be Good. And I guess what I liked about it, there was more songs. So his first EP that he dropped was 4 songs, and that one was called Early Arrival. And then this one has, I think, 7 songs. So every time I listen to this dude, this is one thing that keeps on ringing in my head, which is, I wonder how he would sound in a full-length project. So that's what I asked him. And via just me asking him that question, I got to realize that, okay, via his answer to me, he told me that, I'm not in a rush to actually drop a full-length project as yet, because I feel like people don't know me, And that sparked up something that I've been having low debates in between, with a couple of people that I know in my circle, in relation to that golden time in hip-hop around 2012, 2013. No, actually 2011 till 2013. There used to be a thing called mixtapes. EPs weren't even as big then. But, when it comes to mixtapes, that's something that we knew, we expected in a whole rollout plan of an artist. It can be an up-and-coming artist, and Sama Thomas Osirlisan, or a whole album. You start off by giving us at least a mixtape, even if it's 10 tracks, just for us to actually understand who you are, what type of artist you are, And, I guess that's just me just holding on to just that time in itself, because at least then, you could look back at someone's discography and be on some, okay, wow, this dude actually had a lot of, great music and a lot of range as an artist, because, you got to know the person through different angles. Before a person drops a whole album, at least okay, I can expect this via mixtape. EPs have always been a thing, and there's certain songs in EPs which actually make an artist's album. But yeah, that was just one thing that really was in my head. And just to put it in closing, another thing that was just still ringing in my head with regards to this whole full length thing is the fact that we've come to a time where maybe people's attention spans aren't as great as they were before, and maybe that's why a lot of these new acts are opting to actually now just release music in small bite sizes as opposed to just giving us the whole thing. But I would like to see this dude actually just drop a full length project, because I think that would be really dope. And still holding on to this whole project thing, I saw another interesting tweet by Muzi, and he was just pretty much just challenging this whole idea of sequencing in albums and actual flow, and also just that whole idea of a concept album. I don't think concept albums still exist as much, but just sticking on that whole idea of flow and sequencing within an album, I felt touched when I just saw him responding to other people and being open to the ideas and their whole approach on that whole discussion that we was holding via whether or not that we still need people to just include sequencing in their albums, because it feels these days musicians are allowed to just create whatever it is that they create, but there's dangers that come with that whole thing, because when I think about AKA's latest release, Bovamania, and also just trying to deduce the information that I was gathering via the recent interviews that he did after he released the project. just get into his head, trying to figure out like, what inspired him to do the project. It was more of an approach of like, I'm just gonna rewrite the rules and just, do whatever it is that I want to do. But, there's dangers, like I did mention earlier on, like, because when you listen to the project in itself, it's not really his strongest project, and it's his most less talked about project. If we being honest, it's not too many people were talking about that project when you released it, because there was no flow. When I think about Touch My Blood, he may have dumped down in terms of lyrics and his whole approach and style to like the writing, but like the music in itself, it actually flowed. I could go back in time and still listen to Touch My Blood, because like when I think about 2018, I think about a whole lot of projects that were released and which were good. He even released that Be Careful What You Wish For with Anati, which is one album that I regard as a classic, because it actually flowed. And I still feel like in as much as people don't want to be held to this pressure of like, you gotta have the best album, you have to have a classic release, but like there has to be flow. There really has to be flow. Without flow, I feel like the art in itself is actually dying. And just taking it back to just SA hip hop, seeing that I just mentioned AKA, even when I think about a classic album, because when you think about 2015, 2016, Barfilo with Karakara, Skhanda rap was at its peak. We had Questa just releasing hits after hit. Casper was also just at his peak too, right? But when you actually do think about it, it's a thing, the album Mola, that list of like those 4 artists that you can say from track 1 to the end actually flew. I like Casper as an artist. I like him as a musician too. But I feel like out of his whole discography, Tuto was the only album that I felt like, was an album that pretty much just supports everything that I've been trying to talk about from, the very beginning as we started this whole thing, which is, talking about concept albums and albums in themselves in terms of flow. Because, it felt like, this is a body of work that someone actually took his time, and actually crafting, pretty much just kept putting everything together. So with that, I feel like, okay, cool, maybe in these discographies are like a 2 out of 4. Yeah, I think these are like 4 albums out. Yeah, 2 out of 4 from me. Those are albums that I feel like, were really solid. Skhanda Republic 1 was an actually dope album. It flew through too. And, when I think about Questa, I'm like, okay, cool. He's really strong when it comes to releasing singles. And I guess like his latest release is something that has been changing my whole mindset towards him in terms of like, where I put him in that whole bracket of like, SA hip hop album classics, and, people actually were doing something in terms of, not only just pushing the culture in terms of like great songs, mainstream songs, but even the way in which we were packaging these albums, that was, something that came to mind when I was just thinking about Questa. Also in this current time with the latest release album that he has. And just to wrap up, there was just something else that I wanted to talk about. It's been in my head for some time, and, it's this whole idea of like rollout strategies, and how serious people actually take themselves, because we've seen KO, come from just pushing Cash Time Fam to Cash Time Life, and seeing that whole label in itself actually break down to resurrecting the brand in the form of like clothing. And, for some time we just thought that he's just going to push clothing, and then eventually that in itself became a label, and through this label we got to see him introducing us to new acts like Low Key and Roy. I may not be sure in terms of where he gets the funding, but I know for sure that he has a licensing deal with Sony. It's a long time relationship that he's had, ever since he even released what's this? I think PQI LTD. I know he's been indie for some time. I'm not so sure what happened in terms of SR2 as a release, whether if like the terms and conditions of that deal was like a full-on artist deal that he had, or it was a licensing deal. But just seeing how he operates, and how the style in which he operates in a way like shows that there are ways in which we could, come up with better ways to market our music. Because like when you look at Skhanda World's Twitter page and all their social media and everything that they've been doing, gathering up to the weeks that we are, not even the weeks, but this week that we are in now of June, you could see that there was an actual plan in terms of like rollout. They had planned that such and such is going to release a song, release a music video, and then boom, got to a point where I think the second last release was Roy, which is a kid that he signed from Pretoria. And I'd also just like, to congratulate that dude in terms of like, the sound and the song itself that he released with Focalistic. I feel like that's a really dope song. And it's like, it's giving me that thing of like, okay, I'm starting to understand this kid even better, because once I released that Njelic as a Skhanda World, and okay, this kid is melodic, but I'm not so sure about him as a writer. And what I could gather up from this latest release is the fact that he's got something really great in him, and I'm only excited to see what's going to happen in terms of the future if he is planning on releasing a project. I think this is where we're going to leave it off this week, seeing that we've been off for a bit, and I had a whole lot to discuss in terms of albums, concepts, and flow and sequencing within albums. And I guess this is the part where I leave it off to you as my listener and the audience to actually just deliberate on what you think is best. Do you think that we still need concept albums? Should artists or even independent labels, even just labels as such, figure out new ways to just roll out these songs? Because as much as you may have a product and you may have a following, sometimes you may need a rollout strategy just to give that song that you're releasing or that project that you're releasing that extra push. For those of you who don't know me, I still go by the name of Danny Pacheco, and this was the Big T Debate. Peace.